Today's episode of Uncommon Sense, we speak with Chestertonian Matthew Kelly, the drummer of the band the Dropkick Murphys. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. All right, and welcome back, viewers and listeners, to another episode of Uncommon Sense. I am Joe Grabowski, the Vice President for Evangelization and Mission here at the Chesterton Society. I am not joined today by my traditional co-host, Gretelyn Murphy. Please do say a prayer for Gretelyn and her brand new baby. She's out on maternity leave, so please keep her family in your prayers, both prayers of gratitude and for the health and vibrance of the new child and mother. But I am excited to join today in the digital studio with Matt Kelly, the drummer of the band the Dropkick Murphys. If you're not familiar with them, maybe we'll kind of help position them for you as we chat. But Matt, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Joe, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here. As we were speaking earlier, I've listened to quite a few of the episodes of the show, and I feel unworthy and appreciative to even be on here, to even have been asked. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, it is a great honor, and I've been a fan of the Dropkick Murphys since long before the big hit song, which I think maybe we'll get to talk about. First heard about you guys. I had a friend whose her dad was in kind of like a local traditional Irish band where I grew up, and so I think I remember her first having like Dropkick Murphys gear in maybe 2000 or might have even been like 99, or like stickers or the logo or something. So it goes back quite a while.
Oh, that's amazing. I had no idea. You don't know. I mean, I know people whom I would think would know would have been obvious in their wheelhouse that they would have known my band. And then I'm so blown away and surprised by what I hear, they even know who we are. Wow. So yeah. I mean, we started in '96, so in touring from the end of '96 on. So we were out there, on the West Coast was our first big bit of trips, but we started off around New England in the Northeast.
Great. Well, I want to get into the band certainly, and your experience as a musician, and then of course your interest in Chesterton. So we have a lot to talk about, but maybe start just give our listeners a sense of Matt Kelly. Who is Matt Kelly, and a bit about your background.
Okay. I am a 48-year-old dude from central Massachusetts. I grew up in in Worcester County, the town of Leominster, which actually yesterday was just flooded horribly by some crazy storm. And my dad's a drummer, still plays drums. I come from a family of musicians, and I'm also poets and philosophers, and so I grew up with music in the house, and I started playing out by around the age of 12, I think. Small time stuff at schools and what have you, but. I went to St. Leo Catholic parochial school in Leominster, Mass, and attended the public high school there. Soon thereafter, I worked unloading trucks and stocking shelves, and so to sustain my habit of playing in bands. And then a few years later, I was lucky enough to be asked to join the Dropkicks. And, that was 1997. So. And I've been on tour ever since. Pretty tired, but it's been great. I always read a lot, and I was drawn. I had a decent faith formation, which kind of fell by the wayside, or at least was neglected during my late teen years, and only was later rekindled in my adult life.
And what about Chesterton? So how did you get into reading Chesterton in particular? Was that kind of before your reversion or after?
It was actually the impetus or the catalyst for it. I'd never fallen out of faith. I just fell out of practice, which, can be it's not a good thing either. But yeah, I mean, as we got older, as my siblings and I got older, I think you know, with life getting in the way, so to speak, we sort of fell by the wayside, going to mass regularly, and then just pretty much all together as we got older and could make our own decisions. But I was never an atheist or anything like that, and I never got into anything crazy as far as that goes. Just I had some read some not exactly authoritative books by some interesting authors that had some funny ideas about the Catholic Church. So I just sort of like fell by the wayside a bit. But the funny thing is, and I'm not a big heavy metal guy, but Iron Maiden is one of my favorite bands of all time. I always really dug them. And you'd be a kid, you'd be reading the liner notes, studying the pictures and the liner notes and the thanks lists and all the lyrics. And for the probably 3,000th time, I was looking at the lyrics to the song Revelations on the album Live After Death. And then after the first verse, there was a little credit to G.K. Chesterton. Like, oh, I never heard of that guy, but the first verse is actually "O God of Earth and Altar," the prayer, the song rather, or poem. I'm not sure what came first, but so I was, so that's I'm into philosophy. I'm into a little bit of apologetics, what have you. Who is this guy? And so looked it up online on a book distributor website that a lot of people know, and lo and behold, I saw Common Sense 101, Dale Alquist's compendium of Chestertonian quotes and in some of his philosophy, his underlying philosophy and his approach on life. And I was just like, how did I never hear of this guy? And I was talking to my dad, and he's like, G.K. Chesterton. He's like, didn't he write the Father Brown mysteries? He's like, oh, I used to read those in high school, yada, yada, yada. So it sort of rekindled my interest in the Catholic Church in a more serious manner, because I had been thinking that we lived in a new parish in South Boston, Mass, and I was like, there's no excuse for me not to be going to Mass. And I just, and this sort of really was a springboard. Reading Chesterton was a springboard for me to getting back into taking my faith seriously and being part of parish life. I was a lector at St. Bridget's in South Boston while we lived there for a few years. While we lived there, and I got more into Chesterton, which also kind of got me more into people like Hilaire Belloc, and then of course I knew about Joseph Pierce from other means, and I realized, wow, he's a Chestertonian, and holy cow! And it all ties in with my favorite author, J.R.R. Tolkien. It was. And I never realized that he was so fundamentally Catholic in his works or in his philosophy either, or his theology. It just blew me away that I was like, you could say, a fellow traveler for so long. If a one who wasn't so fired up about it, I realized that what am I waiting for to actually take this seriously and really delve into spiritual life, and again, as mentioned in the Gilbert interview, I was really I bought a lot of books on the Stoics, Aurelius and Epictetus and what have you, and I reconciling philosophy and theology. It just reading Chesterton really sort of brought it all together and in more into language that I could actually process and understand without a lexicon of insane words, because I'm as I'm to borrow an oft used word by Joseph Pierce, I'm an autodidact. I didn't go to college or anything, so just kind of doing this on my own. And Chesterton really that Iron Maiden song kind of sprung me into renewed my faith into a renewal of my faith. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, very familiar notes with what we hear around here all the time, from converts that, they'll discover Chesterton, and in a lot of cases, it's not new so much as just he's sort of always been around, but in the peripheries. And I kind of like to think of him, we of course think he's a saint and that he's up there
Yeah.
interceding for us and working for us. And I kind of like to think that that's how he is. He's kind of lurking around the corner at the dinner party, sort of,
Yeah.
yeah. Because like I was similar. I read Lewis, read Tolkien, and I can't remember what it was that finally pushed me into Chesterton, and but then you kind of find in him a real tying up of just so much that until at least in my intellectual life, but and faith life, until then were loose ends, and he just brought it all together for me, which I'm forever grateful for.
You know what? That's exactly a way more articulate way of saying what I was trying to say. He did all these loose ends, all these wonderful things that I didn't realize were actually part of a greater whole. He just sort of boom, here it is, and and it also he also was a springboard for me to looking into distributism, it's by means of then getting into like papal economics and these sort of things, and he just because he wrote about so many different things, as we all know, he wrote about everything. Um, it brought me to a wider range of subjects that I have been interested in, and that's another. I'm grateful to the man for his genius, sharing that with everybody in the wealth of writings that he had made.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's always. You can kind of keep him alongside you throughout life, and you're never going to run out of reading to do. That's one great thing about it. But then
Right.
I just, uh, as much as I have, I'm here not where I typically record the podcast. I'm up in my library at home, and I have whole big case full of Chesterton. And of course, whenever you have books in your house, the first question you always get is, "Have you read all of them?" And the answer, of course, is no, I haven't.
Oh no, no way. I mean, I got
Yeah,
a few.
I'd love to get there. But, until then, they're there, which means I can pull them off the shelf. But the darndest thing is that I don't. I pull the same ones off the shelf because there's no number of times too many that I can return to St. Francis of Assisi or St. Thomas Aquinas and just pour through those again.
Sure.
And just, yeah, it's like lightning bolts every time.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things that there's a reason why they're classics, or they're indispensable, reference books, or apologetics, or whatever the subject may be. And yeah, you can. That's the beauty of these books. You can return to them over and over again. The
Yeah.
brothers, the brothers by Dostoevsky. You could read, people read, you read that a million times, or the Lord of the Rings, or I probably read, I've probably read Orthodoxy 3 or 4 times, and every time you get something new out of it every time you read it, because it's, as much as the language is simple and easy to understand, there's just so much going on that you may get something get a surface, you get get something out of it on the surface in one paragraph, and the next one you're just blown away by. You read the same chapter again, and you catch that first thing that you sort of glossed over quickly, especially if you're me, you drink too much coffee. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so it's there are those books that just, orthodoxy, and also for some reason the Man Who Was Thursday is one I just read a whole bunch. I don't know why. It's I think maybe
Yeah.
it's a lot easier, and it's fiction, so it's easier to digest. But it also an important
It's
work.
fun. Anyway,
It's fun,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have the other thing about reading, over time and going back to the same works is certainly in my life, I've noticed you change. You as the reader change, and therefore the new insights that you're pulling out of the book, again, they were always there, but now you're in a different season in your life. You're a little older, a little wiser. I had a professor once who he talked about writing notes in the margins of his books, and he
Right.
said he liked to call them jokes to his older self, right? And I
That's
thought,
pretty good.
yeah, it's really
Yeah,
good. I thought that's
that's
great because the older self would open that book and say, "What an idiot I was that I
yeah.
thought that this." It's
That meant this. Yeah,
so I thought.
yeah. That's
um,
brilliant.
So I know I would get fired from the podcast, if not the society, if I failed to ask what I'm sure is the question on everybody's mind. Do you still have that drum kit with the Chesterton image on the front of the bass drum?
I have in Europe. I have the kick drum head is the picture of Chesterton. Over here in the
Yeah.
States, which actually reminds me, I have to update it because we were doing a tour with an acoustic tour with songs that had lyrics of Woody Guthrie's lyrics that were unpublished. So there was sort of a Woody Guthrie theme, which
Mm-hmm.
um, for better or for worse. So that picture, his picture was on the front of my kick drum at the time, and it still is there. And I have to update it by putting either a blank thing on there, or if I still have the other Chesterton one from here, I may pop that back on because I talked to some of some of the coolest people because they'll come up to me as like, is that? I'm like, yeah, that's him. That's or I've got some, oh, is that Theodore Roosevelt? Like, why would I have Theodore Roosevelt? And somebody asked me if it was. Oh my gosh, I was really bummed out. They asked if it was uh, was it either like Lenin or something horrible, someone horrible like that. I said, like, let me tell you, there's no way I would have anyone having anything to do with that on anything to do with me.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think we're gonna have to pop that Chesterton head back on there because there's been a lot of talk about it. So
Yeah. Well, it's a great opportunity too. I mean, we're one of the things we talk about at the society is that Chesterton's a model of the new evangelization, but kind of a a first step sometimes in our work of evangelization, or our approach anyway, is try to basically introduce people to Chesterton and let him lead them, the rest of the way because he's going to do a better job than most of us. So
definitely,
yeah,
and
we get questions. Is that?
you do,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm a buddy of mine who's he's pretty much I'd say he was an atheist. I think maybe he's a bit agnostic now, but he's asking me about Chesterton and this and that. And he's like, yeah, listen, hey, guys, he has so many great things to say and this and that. And I'm just like, yeah, there you go. Get in, keep reading, keep digging because, he, like I said, the evangelization is powerful with this guy. And, and I think that the more someone reads of him, the more open they are to the true, the good, and the beautiful. Because people are so today are so they're so polarized, but also their hearts are so hard. And I think read Chesterton just kind of opens you up to, I don't know, the big guy coming down and softening your heart a little bit, and then and then who knows, and then it's up to God from there, of course. But
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I want to pivot here and kind of get into because I think as a faithful man, as a Catholic father and a husband, and just doing your best in this world, but then of course you kind of have this role as being on the road and playing in a band, and of course the stereotypes that we all have of the life of rockers is not quite. Sometimes commensurate with what we try to accomplish in our vocations as Christian men.
correct.
So I think people would benefit because all of us in our different walks of life sometimes get spoiled by success, right? That
Mhm.
and the Dropkick Murphys, with the film The Departed, and that kind of must have been like a coup for you guys getting that song on that big, you know, gigantic movie with such an all-star cast, Martin Scorsese. Um,
Mhm.
how did that change kind of life for you as a musician, and then how do you face those challenges and not fall into those temptations that of course abound in that kind of lifestyle?
Well, believe it or not, as far as the band's popularity goes, it was such a slow growth. Even when that song was featured in the film, we we we'd always taken the hard path as far as, especially in the '90s, back when record labels would offer bands tour support. Just, basically they would offer bands a loan that was recoupable on record sales, and the band would take, so the band could tour and be at least comfortable, but they would owe the label money at the end of the day. Um,
Mhm.
we never took that. I think we took that once ever, and it was, I forget the reason, but we always did things. We kept a tight budget, ran a tight ship, and just would just go for it till it works. So, and it was, we always kept it pretty grassroots as far as, we had no radio airplay. We had no there was nothing really going on as far as incredible advertisement, except just playing shows and being a good band, a tight band, I should say. From 1996 until when that song was featured in the movie, we had been touring for years by then and built a small but loyal following around U.S. and Europe, Japan, Australia, and it was, the ironic thing was, in Boston, where we're from, you could walk down the street, somebody see a Dropkick Murphys shirt, and they say, "What is? I don't know what that is." But we'd be playing places like Ancienne Belgique over in Brussels to like 2,000 people, whereas Boston, it was like, we're kind of not that well known. In the Departed thing, and also we had a song, Tessie, in being used by the Red Sox. In this sort of slowly broke us open to the mainstream in Boston and New England, and and then, of course, shipping up to Boston took on a life of its own. It's played in sports arenas here and there, not even in New England. It's crazy. But my point is, it happened so slowly that it wasn't like an overnight, holy cow, like everybody knows who we are. Like, and also, I think the type of band we are, there are certain people in the band who are, now instantly recognizable, but for the first 15 plus years of the band's existence, it was to not to be cheesy, it was the music that did the talking. It was like the guys in the band were just the guys in the band, and only because we've been around for so long, I think now there's and with social media, you see our faces, and like, well, not mine, nobody knows who I am, which I'm more than happy with. A lot of guys in the band, people will recognize them everywhere,
Yeah.
but it wasn't always like that, and I think it happened in such a slow, um, incremental way that I don't know if from 1996 to now, uh, if there was like a sea change at one particular moment, or in one year, it was so slow and gradual. I think we're luckily able to process the popularity of the band and stuff. I mean, I for me, I'm a guy who plays drums, and I'm lucky enough to do what I love for a living. You can take the popularity. I don't. I'm
Yeah.
a pretty quiet guy, and I keep to myself, and I couldn't care less about being recognized, or I mean, on stage, I tell the light guy to keep the lights off me. For I just play my drums. If I can read my set list and play my drums, that's fine. Um, in the rock and roll world, that notion. I mean, there's always going to be some kernel of truth in the stereotype of how musicians are and how people, bands and stuff are. But I saw this great poster at a venue one time. It had four pictures. I guess it was like a meme. The first picture looked like a satanic ritual, and it said, what your parents think happens backstage. Another picture shows some kind of wild party with Motley Crue and like booze and drugs, and says, what your friends think happens backstage. Then down below, there's a picture of some other kind of debauchery, and this is what your fans think happens backstage. And then the fourth picture is just some guys sleeping, one guy reading a book, one guy looking at his phone. What actually happens backstage? Um, I mean, it's we've been told by bus drivers that we're the the lamest band they've ever driven for, because I mean, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, there are people, people indulge in the drinks and stuff now and then, all that, but like a lot of the guys in the band, most of the guys don't even drink anymore and haven't for a long time. And like the band, people always thought that our band was this, you know, let's get drunk sort of thing. But the themes to most of the songs are, what have I done to my life? Redemption and stuff like that. And it's less a celebration of drinking, but more of a more of cautionary tales written in a manner that's like Irish folk music. It's always about tragedy and famine and hardship, but put to beautiful music. And I think that's the dichotomy of Irish music and of what we do. And yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of books on our buses, strangely enough. you know, um, it's the only the thing I find hard is trying to get to mass on Sundays on tour. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can catch an evening mass here and there during the week at places, especially in the U.S. In Europe, I found it a lot harder because even though there are more churches, those churches are now either museums or are desanctified, and whatever's happening there. So I found we just did a tour of Europe in August, and I really had a hard time finding masses.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I can believe it. I've been in the same boat and used to travel much more for work in previous life, and sometimes it got a little harried, but it's encouraging to hear, and I think that's sort of that groundedness, very very Chestertonian in its way too. That Chesterton, in spite of his popularity at the time, and I don't think we so far removed people that aren't well familiar with his biography probably just don't know how kind of much of a celebrity he was in his day.
Exactly. Yes. Right.
He was known by and sort of the desirable guest that the most fashionable people kind of wanted to get to their dinner parties and things like that. But
right.
Very very evidently in his writing, that great humility, he never let it go to his head. So thank God.
And that's an inspiration. That right there. Two words I meditate on a lot are gratitude and humility. There's this. It's like you put things into perspective. I play music in a band. It's entertainment for people, and there are people out there saving lives and doing like beautiful work and helping people out, and like people might say, "Oh, you guys saved our life, my life," whatever. We're music and we're entertainment, and there are people that have that people that could have way bigger egos than we do because they're actually doing a lot more for people than we might be. So, I mean, that puts things into perspective for me. It's gratitude and humility all the way.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to touch upon? I know you said you're doing in our pre-podcast interview or email exchange. You mentioned you're doing. Is it for Michaelmas that you're entering
for Michaelmas?
Into? Yeah. For Michaelmas. Okay, so that's actually a great. I participate here locally in kind of a Catholic men's group. And we're always looking for ways to mark the year and participate in some of the more traditional sort of cycles of living that used to be part and parcel of the church year, not only because it was kind of built into the liturgical calendar, but also when we were an agricultural society, for example, you had those seasons to life in a more, now we just flick on the electric lights. It doesn't matter that it's dark outside at 5 o'clock afternoon. So maybe talk a little bit about that, about what you're hoping to accomplish with that, what Exodus 90 is for those of our folks that might not be familiar.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could mention that. Yeah. Well, it's funny. My family and I moved to New Hampshire. We're in Boston for 20. I lived in South Boston for almost 18 years or something. and we moved up, decided to get a little bit more rural. We found a wonderful, wonderful small Catholic school for our son. Amazing. And with that, it's also it's in the parish of St. Patrick in Newport, New Hampshire, and we I've talked to some of the people there, and it's a great community. The people are wonderful. It's a very reverent parish. It's Novus Ordo, but it's very reverent. Um, and there's a lot of there. I think people are uh, trying to incorporate more of the old ways as much as they are allowed to and they can. And so um, I was. This is funny. On this past tour, I forget where it was. I got the email, the Exodus 90 email. The St. Michael's Lent is starting up, and I read about it. This pretty cool. I often do abstention and stuff for Lent for traditional Lent and all that. I said, this is kind of maybe a cool way to keep me grounded um, I have the time out here on the road. I'm going to do this, and for people who do know, or for people who don't know, you form a fraternity typically with your fellow parishioners or friends, just to kind of support each other, keep each other in check during this Lent, which is from the goes from the Feast of the Assumption to Michaelmas, which is on the 29th of September. It's a 40-day span. It's so it just kind of keeps you in dialogue with other men about this and supporting each other. And so I just signed up, and I just was doing it on my own for less than a week, and I get a text from a fellow parishioner back home. He's like, "Hey, a bunch of the guys and I are doing this St. Michael's Lent thing. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Holy cow, man! Like, I've been doing this on my own. I'd love to." So, lo and behold, I joined the fraternity on that. So we have a nice support group there. And after coming home, they we get together on Tuesday nights at one of the guys' houses. Is a group of about 20 guys. There are three main tenets of the this Lenten thing. It's prayer, asceticism, and fraternity. So, basically the the prayer part. I mean, aside from trying to get 2 holy hours a week, I believe, well, 1 or 2 holy hours a week, half an hour a day of silent prayer. There's it's reading Revelation and then a reflection on each of these readings that each of the 40 days, and it just really is an amazing exegesis, I think you would call it, just of just analyzing um, Revelation, and just because it's there's a lot of allegory in there. So it's a very intense book, and it really breaks it down, which has been a beautiful thing. And then also reflecting and meditating and praying on that has been a very cool part of this exercise. The second part, the asceticism, we abstain from meat on Wednesdays and Fridays. Much like your Ash Wednesday and Fridays in Lent, and sometimes all year. And you can also add different asceticisms like cold showers, more intense fasting. What we've been doing is every morning to not hit the snooze button on your alarm, to jump up and do 12 push-ups, one for each apostle, and then go about your day. So that ties into the fraternity part of it, where there's a although the idea is part of it is to limit your cell phone use and to limit scrolling in social media. There is a chat group on the Exodus app. So, but we keep it pretty serious, but it's nice just to check in with the other guys, and you know this morning, I'm doing, this morning I'm doing this. This morning, why don't we think about this? Why don't we reflect on this? The other day, last night at our get together, we're talking about focusing on praying to our guardian angels, and we had a big discussion on that. So it's been like a weekly get together about this, and it's been the fraternity does seem very palpable too. It's great getting together with these guys, many of whom I didn't know before joining this. Um, some of whom I knew just kind of an acquaintance kind of way, but it's growing. It seems like it's helping our parish grow more in community to together. I mean, for anybody who hasn't tried it, the Exodus 90 thing, I'm not a paid, I'm not an employee or anything. I think it's pretty great. I've been enjoying it. I think it's helped me a good program, and a good way of keeping track of my spiritual life and inner life, and my relationship with Christ, deepening that, because that's one thing I've been struggling with is I think I have a wonderful relationship as far as I'm concerned with our Blessed Mother, and I have a very easy relationship with her. But with Christ Himself, I mean, I have a stronger relationship with or that I know of with His intercessor than I do with Him Himself, and this is helping me grow closer to Him.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile endorsement. I've never done it myself, actually. I have friends who have, and I hear just ravings about it. But I think that whether it's that program or some other means that one does, just the importance, I think, of being deliberate in one's own formation. That you can't we can't be passive about this. That whether it's in the intellectual or the spiritual life, or just you wouldn't think that you're going to get ahead at your job if if you just let everything come to you at you got to be in the business world. They say you got to be a go-getter, but we don't kind of translate that attitude sometimes to the real riches that we're supposed to be earning and storing up, right?
Yes.
So
Well, it's
yeah.
like with love. Love is not a passive thing, right? And I think
Mm.
love and prayer to our Creator, and Father, Son, and Spirit. Uh, it's going to be an act. It's going to be an active role, and not, like you said, a passive role. You're not going to sit back and receive grace by just hanging out. We
Right.
have to. I know it's works and faith, or prayer and works, but at this, and it's only through it's only Him giving it to us. We're not. I know it's a tenuous thing. Our actions aren't making this happen, but I think they're, of course, they're appreciated by Him. But it's not a passive activity. In this particular exercise has helped me with not just realizing that, but with keeping it an organized and daily um, uh, reverence. Whether
Hmm.
that or the Hallow app, I've been use that, because if I'm commuting to Boston for practice, I can be saying a rosary with the mysteries being explained beautifully. So I got the rosary beads in one hand, and I have the steering wheel in the other hand, and it's actually a very calming and beautiful thing, because instead of just listening to music or whatever in the car ride, an hour plus car ride, I can do something that's actually fruitful, and I can pray for people and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, great advice, and I think again an inspiration to wherever we are in our walk in life, and I'm always impressed to meet the listeners or viewers of this podcast show. How different they are and how they discover us. So I'm sure that there's we have surgeons and pilots and all kinds of folks out there. But I think regardless of what you do, you can find time for these sorts of things, the most important things, and also find time for reading Chesterton, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, all the
Well, I
time.
think
I have a
that'll
lot. Yeah, on the road, I have quite a bit of time.
yeah. Well, I think that'll just about wrap us up. If you have any last kind of words of wisdom for our audience, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
I have no wisdom, unfortunately. I'm just I tend to receive wisdom, or rather, I try to I read about it and I try to apply it. But maybe my one of my favorite Chesterton quotes is any dead thing can go with the stream, but it takes something alive to go against it. And
Mhm.
I think in my world, in my line of work, I think it's I definitely have to be alive because I'm not trying to go with that sort of flow.
Yeah. Well, God bless you in that effort, and I think it's
Thanks.
urge our readers to check out the work of the Dropkick Murphys and maybe Exodus 90. And also, I would put another plug in there. Great time of year for The Man Who Was Thursday. For some reason, that's always an autumn
It's an
book for me.
autumnal. I totally agree. Yeah, it has. You can smell the leaves when you're reading it.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
it's great. You want to have a pipe and a read. Oh, beautiful.
yeah, as the
That's funny.
days
I never
get
thought of that, but
darker,
you're so right.
shorter and darker. Yeah, open up The Man Who Was Thursday. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you once again, Matt. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Joe. Likewise, and thanks for having me. I'm honored.
And to all of you, our viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Uncommon Sense. Please do like and share this podcast wherever you're consuming it, whether it's on a podcast app or over on YouTube. If you're watching, please give the like, hit the bell notification, get subscribed, comment. I don't understand how all these things work, but I am told that helps other people find the podcast and tune in, and that's important. And please do also keep the Chesterton Society, our work, in your thoughts and prayers. Please consider going to chesterton.org/give and contributing to help us in our work of evangelization through education as we try to introduce more people to G.K. Chesterton so that he can lead them to Jesus Christ. Until next time, God bless.